Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate a quilt block with a star pattern in it, and it's called an 8-point star. So let's take a look at it. Isn't this pretty? Now, because we've got Memorial Day coming and we've got a 4th of July coming up, I felt very inspired to make a block out of patriotic fabric. So everything's red, white, and blue on here. There's even a little bit of glitter in here. Now, this 8-point star is made up of half square triangles, and I'm going to show you an easy method to do this particular block. Now, I know it looks complicated, but really it's not. Once you get your half square triangles made, all it means is just placing them in the correct pattern. So let's get started. Let me go over what you need. Now, the finished size of this particular block that I'm making is 12.5 inches square. Now, there's 4 different squares across and down this way, and in each block it's identified what fabrics are being used. So here it's just the A fabric. In this one you'll see A and B, this one A and C, and so forth. They're all identified, and you'll see different changes in the picture here so that you know it's different fabrics. So what you need to cut out of your fabric A, you're going to cut out 2 different sizes, 4 squares, 3.5 inches. And then out of fabric A, B, and C, you're going to cut 4 of each that are 4 inches square. Okay, so now that you've got everything cut out, I'm going to show you what fabrics I'm using. So here is my A fabric, and here is my B fabric, and then here is my C fabric. So make sure you get your fabrics all identified so you know where everything needs to go. Now, on your squares of your 4-inch squares of A and B, you're going to need to draw a line down the center. Okay, so take your ruler, place it corner to corner, and with a pencil or fabric marker, whatever you like to use, and draw a line. Okay, so now you're going to pair your squares up in this manner. You're going to bring A and B together, okay, and you're going to lay it front sides together of the fabric. And then on each side of the pencil line, you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch there. So let me show you what it looks like. Here is my A and B. Now, you're going to have 2 out of A and B. So here's my B on the back. And then you're going to do 2 of A and C. Here's my C fabric. A and C, then 2 out of B and C. Okay, so you're going to do 2 of each. Then you're going to take them and cut them in half. So put your ruler on that pencil line and then go ahead and cut all of them in half. Now you want to press. So go to the ironing board, and you're going to take your A and B fabric, press the seam towards the light side. Okay, press the seam towards the light side. Then take your A and C half square triangles and press them towards the dark side. Okay, it's important that these 2 are pressed in opposite directions of each other. Then after you've done that, you want to take each block and square it up to 3.5 inches. Now on your ruler, I like using this little square ruler, but on your ruler there's a diagonal line. There's that 45-degree line. You're going to place that right on top of the seam here. Then, because we want to cut this block down to 3.5 inches, you need to place the 3.5 inch line just inside the edges here. So when I do that, I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but I have a little bit of fabric hanging out all 4 edges. And you want it like that. You want to get that 3.5 inch square area centered inside of your square. And then go ahead and cut your first 2 edges. Okay. Now you want to take the block, grab this corner here, and turn it. Now you're going to take your 3.5 inch line and place it on the previously cut edge. Okay? Line it up in that corner, make sure it's this corner down here, make sure it's going straight. Make sure this diagonal line is still across there. And then cut the last 2 sides so that all of your blocks look nice and clean like that. So do all of them like that. Okay, now after you've cut everything, you want to begin laying your blocks out in this pattern. Okay, and I'll go over it in detail. Okay, now up here, or I should say in all 4 corners, you're going to put that 3.5 inch square of A fabric up here. Those are the ones you cut earlier, placing them up here. Then take all of your half square triangles and begin arranging them in this order. So you can see these 2 colors come together, these 2 colors come together, and you just look at this pattern. It'll kind of look like a pinwheel. If you look right down there in the center, it kind of looks like a pinwheel. Now, we're going to start stitching the squares together in each row. So you're going to take your 3.5 inch square and bring it on top of that second square and stitch 1/4 inch. Now you're going to bring these 2 squares together and stitch 1/4 inch. But I want to show something. Look down in this corner right here. So let me get a couple of other squares to show you in detail what I mean. Remember earlier how I said it was important to press those seams in a different direction from each other? One was light, one was too dark. It's so that when you bring the pieces together, those seams lock in nice and tight. So one seam is going in a different direction, then the other seam is on top. So make sure those seams are locked in really tight, okay? So you want to do that on all of those areas where that is going to be taking place. So now you've got these 2 stitched together, and then go ahead and stitch on your last one. Go to the next row and do the same thing, and continue going on down the rows until you've got all 4 rows together. Now you're going to go to your ironing board and you're going to press your seams on the back side. So press them on the back side, and usually when I'm at the ironing board, after I finish one seam, I pick it up, I grab the next seam, press, grab the next seam, press. It goes much faster that way. Now when you're pressing, you need to press on the top side, and this is where you want to pay attention to the direction of where the seam is pressed. So in your first row, press it in this direction. So you're going to keep the row lifted slightly, and with your iron, push against this seam as you press on top. Keep going across and push and push. Now don't stretch your fabric. Then turn it over to make sure it's all going in the same direction. Okay? So now go to the next row and press that also, and continue on down, pressing all of your rows. Now make sure that the seams in this row are going in the opposite direction of that row, and so forth. This way, so when we match up the rows together, they all lock in nice and tight. So now, once you've got that done, take the first 2 rows and bring them on top of each other. Now, pay attention to the seams. Make sure they're really close but not overlapping. Make sure that the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction than the seam on top. Once you've got it lined up, then make sure you pin it. This way when you're stitching, it won't shift. And continue doing that all the way across. Match up your seams. Then stitch 1/4 inch along this edge. And unfold it. Add on your next row. Match up those seams again. Very important. Otherwise, it's going to come out really, really crooked and you're not going to be happy with the results. And go ahead and stitch 1/4 inch. And then, of course, add on the very last row. Now, you've got one more pressing process. Let me get this out of the way. Let's look at the finished one. Okay. You need to take your seams and press them on the back side because you want to get them nice and flat. So press them. Do all 3 seams that way. Then go back to the front of the block and you're going to press your seams on top. And I like to press all my seams going in the same direction. So with your iron, gently push against the seams as you're pressing it all the way across. And then you are done and you have this beautiful star block. I think it's just a gorgeous block. It's really easy if you do exactly what I say. Okay, really important, pay attention to your seam allowance. Also pay attention to the pressing. Don't neglect any of those 2 areas, because if you don't do that, your block is going to come out very lopsided and very, very lumpy. Now, if you're going to do a great big star quilt, you're going to do a whole bunch of these blocks. My advice is to put sashing, that's what this is, in between all the blocks. And there's a special process you need to go through to do that on. So if you don't know how to do sashing on a quilt, click on the link in the upper right-hand corner, and it's called Sashing Number 1, and it will go through great detail on how to do a basic sashing on a quilt. Now, if you want to keep informed on all my future videos, and I have a lot of videos, I put a lot out every week, you need to click on the subscribe button. Actually, there's 2 of them. There's one down there in the lower right-hand corner and one there in the upper left-hand corner. It's a round picture of my face. Click on either one of those. YouTube's then going to prompt you for your email address. Enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube sends you a brief email with a big button in the center. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl, and I'm so glad you came to my sewing room, and I am going to see you next time, and happy sewing.